You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The next thing that we wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting, I'm a bit more excited about it than David is, but
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good
thing. It's just
right. So what has happened is New York City passed a law mandating just cause for fast food workers to be fired. So just cause is basically important. The opposite of at-will employment. So at-will employment...
Is it just for fast food workers, or is it...
It is just for fast food workers.
Specifically for... Only fast... Well, see, then therein lies another issue.
Right, it should be for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, why? Why just fast food workers?
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just... I'm not sure what the deal is there, but it is just for fast food workers.
I mean, we got retail workers that make less than fast food workers nowadays. Look at Dollar General. All these exploitative companies that's moving in. Look at Walmart. You know, you don't, and that's the problem with legislation is, you know, the government gives, the government can take away.
Right. So it says quick service employees. Quick service employees. So I think that's fast food. So, so just cause what they've done is they made it illegal to fire somebody without just cause, which it is in most of the country, it is legal to fire somebody for any reason, basically, which is at will employment. And that's really all there is.
Unless you're organized. Unless
you've got a union contract. And that's, you know, I was going to say, David, explain at will employment to everybody, but I mean, that's really it. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah,
you are employed at the will, at the whim, at the good graces of your ever benevolent boss, right? That's what it means.
Other than just a couple of very difficult to prove charges, which would be discrimination based on sex, race, religion, you know, other than those few federal requirements, then yeah, they can fire you for any reason. But even with those, they gin up another reason. I mean, it's near impossible to prove something like that in a court of law.
Right, because, you know, you could know, it could be obvious through personal interactions that a person is firing you because you're black or because you're gay or because you're 65 years old or something like that. But you know, it's difficult to prove that if you don't have documentation. And so you know, but this is across the country. If you've got a union contract, that's one of the first things that union contracts get rid of is this at-will employment. They make it mandatory that employers show just cause for you to be fired. You know, so here's what the legislation does. Here's what I'm going to explain what the legislation does, and then on the other side of the break, because we're coming up on a break here in about, well, we've got a little bit. We've got about 4 minutes. This legislation limits employee probationary periods to 30 days. Any non-probationary employee who is terminated can take their case to arbitration. Okay, so any non-probationary employee, they've got an avenue to challenge the firing, which is really good. It explicitly outlines several tests for just cause and states that discipline issued more than a year before termination cannot be counted towards progressive discipline, right? So, you know, you get like a reset every year. If you're disciplined in a year and then a year later they fire you, that first discipline cannot be counted towards progressive discipline, which is good. The company has to promptly provide a written explanation to any terminated fast food employee upon their being terminated, and, quote, an arbiter may not consider any reasons not included in such written explanation. So the employer has to write down why they're firing the employee, and if the employee chooses to challenge the firing, the arbitrator cannot look at any reasons outside of that written explanation. That's good stuff. Employees terminated without just cause are to be made whole by being reinstated and being paid back pay. So that is some really, really good stuff. That is some, I mean, this is stuff that would be in a good union contract, and they passed that for all fast food employees in New York City. So this is some really Did you
touch on the seniority issue that they also have outlawed them laying people off out of seniority?
Yes.
That's something that, that they're on strike for at Constellium. Right. They're fighting for at Constellium as being given. Right. Well, I say giving. I'm sure that
there's been lots of organizing happening around this. This didn't come out of nowhere. Of course, there have been fast food workers in New York City fighting for this. I
thought that was important to bring up because New York is doing something that these workers are actually on the street fighting for.
Right. So this is so David and I mean, I really don't think the disagreement here is that large between David and I.
I'm just not a fan of legislation.
Right. So, the what has happened is good, but
it's sustained. Here's the thing, in my opinion, it is more sustainable if workers fight for these rights themselves, other than the legislature coming in. And I think what the legislature is doing is great, but it goes back to the same thing with the ACA. The whole reason that I'm not a big supporter of M4A is because it's a constant battle to keep these legislation enacted, because when the next group comes in, they can just as easily as it was signed into law, take it away. Right. And then, and it speaks of Inseramos building worker power. Right. It's not quick. It's not easy.
No.
But it gets you a lot more, it builds the power that's needed to sustain that.
Yeah. It builds the power that it's needed to sustain that. It builds experience among the workers so that they can do this themselves. There's lots of good reasons to support unionization, but in absence of that, this is some really good stuff. It'll really help workers in New York City. Folks, this is the Valley Labor Report. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
Folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is David Story. We've had a pretty full show for you today. Covered a bunch of topics. We've been talking about this just cause law that was passed in New York City for fast food workers. It has codified seniority provisions. You've got to look at seniority when you think about layoffs. When you're thinking about layoffs that are not like disciplinary actions, but they're like budget mandated, basically. Like you're running in the red and you got to lay somebody off. You got to look at seniority. You can't just fire somebody that's been there for 30 years because you want to have somebody in the job that's new so you can pay them less. You can't do that anymore in New York City in fast food restaurants. There's mandatory arbitration or mandatory ability to arbitrate in the law if you're a non-probationary employee. Probationary periods are limited to 30 days. And I mean, there's just and if you are determined to have been fired without just clause, you have to get your job back with back pay, which is, I mean, this is really good stuff. This is really good stuff. I do not believe that bosses should be able to let people go for any reason at all. If there's a job, the job has to be done, and they've got a worker in the job, and the worker is doing a good job, then I don't care if you don't like if y'all don't get along personally. If the employee is doing a good job, then they should not be able to be fired for no reason at all. The boss should have to prove for some reason that this worker is not doing their job well, or that they don't have seniority and we've got to make some budget cuts or whatever. There ought to be some worker protections. But now this is where, and David and I both agree. But it is much better. David and I both agree on this. It is much better to get these provisions through a union contract than it is through legislation, because it is more permanent. You are better able to keep it up. It builds, getting it through a union contract builds worker experience, so you can fight for more or fight to keep what you've got. It's more autonomous rather than, and of course in New York City, fast food workers have been organizing for this and agitating the city council for this for a long time, no doubt. And we do not want to by any stretch discount the organizing that has happened there.
No, they've been, Unite Here and
of
groups
course.
like that have been fighting on the ground for years.
Absolutely. Of course. But
we need to build it through worker solidarity.
Right.
That's basically the crux of my argument is legislation is not good. Worker solidarity, worker power is good, because when you maintain that worker power and build that worker solidarity, you get more.
Yes.
You don't get just get what you want.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to rely on the government. That's a really good thing about unions and unionization and grassroots worker organizing, is that if you do it right, you can win without having to get the government on your side. And that's really important. That's really good stuff.
And nobody's saying that you should not. I've been extremely supportive of the PRO Act. We need to pass the PRO Act. Nobody's saying we shouldn't be working legislation, but legislation, as my good brother Douglas points out in one of his 5 Fingers video, legislation is the pinky finger. It is it is just a small portion of what we need to build worker power. That's a small portion. We should not rely on it.
Right.
Solidarity is what we should be relying on.
Right. That's exactly right.
And then the who is it? The IUPAT, the painters and the allied trade. Man, those guys are pushing on
doing
Twitter.
A good job. Yeah, follow. You should follow at Go IUPAT. That's the Painters Union, the International Painters Union. They've got a fire Twitter account, as the kids would say.
Dude, and I think they're going to be doing a show with Max. I noticed Max Alvarez from Working People's Pod was talking about he's doing a collaboration with them, so that's going to be good to listen to. So one other thing that we should probably point out now that we've been working with the Labor Radio Network, which is a network of all labor podcasters. Some of them are live like we are. Some of them do just strictly podcasts. But there's a tremendous, I think there's like 20 some odd, roughly 20 people. If you enjoy labor,
there's 70 shows.
Is there that many?
There's 70 shows in like 5 countries.
No, is it really? Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. It shows how much I've been paying attention. We've affiliated with them. They're carrying our show. We're going to be doing some promos for them in the upcoming weeks on our show, and some big things are happening. Well, I think we have a good possibility of getting syndicated at some point, nationally syndicated. But what the point is, if you enjoy listening to our show, if you enjoy workers' rights, labor rights issues, you should definitely go look up the Labor Radio Network. On Facebook, on Twitter, or they've got a Facebook page, laborradio.net, that you can look up, and it'll have all the shows listed on there, and you can pick your favorite podcast throughout the week to listen to.
Yeah, I definitely recommend Working People. It's really good.
Max is unbelievable.
Yeah, Max Alvarez. We got to get him on the show at some point. He just got on as the editor-in-chief at the Real News Network.
Yep.
So that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does there. And
there's a lot of people out there doing much more professional work than we are. We're doing everything we can to make a decent show every Saturday. And people like Joe that's called in, we certainly appreciate him listening. Jeb and all those brothers out there and sisters out there. But there's a lot more out there that is more in depth than we have time to cover on an hour and a half a week.
Yeah. Yeah, so folks, we're rounding out the show. Christmas is on Friday. We will be here the day after Christmas. We'll be talking to y'all the day after Christmas. But everybody have a good Christmas. Have a good Festivus if you don't celebrate Christmas. Have a happy New Year. Hanukkah's over, but
Is Hanukkah over?
Yeah, Hanukkah's over.
I apologize to the Jewish community. I'm not. I've been wishing people happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, but I don't really follow
happy
that.
Chanukah.
Yeah.
So everybody have happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff, and make sure you man the battlefields in the war on Christmas. We want to make sure that we.
With just with a minute left, you're gonna start going into that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Got to make sure we win that war on Christmas, folks. We don't want people having a good time. Us lefties hate Christmas and all that. No, of course we're kidding. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna be hanging out with just my parents and my sister mainly. We're gonna be visiting my granny social distanced leave.
Granny visits.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to be, I think our plan is to sit outside in her carport and she sits inside and talks to us through a screen or something.
I mean, that's good. That's good. If that's great. So the important thing is you're taking care of your family.
Trying to. Gonna try to. So everybody have a good Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. And we will see you next week. So thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments and release them throughout the week. If you don't want to watch the full thing, totally understand. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So, to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We have a website now. We're going to be hopefully in the future populating that with some articles. We're going to have our videos uploaded on there. Bunch of good stuff. thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Labor Report. Or if you're a member of a union or an organization that would be interesting in buying ad space, message the page or message one of our accounts or something. Or if you know David or I, you can message us on Facebook, shoot us a text, give us a call. We're always accepting new advertisers on the program.